Assalamualaikum and hi guys. Today I'm going to talk about legal protection for consumer in e-commerce in Malaysia. Origins of e-commerce started by the combination of many technologies and business processes. The primary technologies that enable e-commerce are computer networking and telecommunications, client computing, multimedia, information retrieval systems, and also electronic data. It shows a significant advantage that serves as a platform to develop consumer management strategies. This is because of the fact that e-commerce connects buyers and sellers directly and allows them to exchange digital information without regard to time or location. Furthermore, it also allows for interactivity and can adapt customer behavior and be adapted in real time and ensuring that it is constantly up to date. In this topic, we will generally discuss the definition of e-commerce in Malaysia, problems faced by e-commerce consumers, advantages, disadvantages of e-consumer, role of international organization in e-contracting, and solutions to the problem. We will also explain acts and cases related to e-commerce in Malaysia, which regulates online businesses and protects consumers' interests. E-commerce law in Malaysia started with the meaning of e-commerce and e-consumer. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "A customer is the most important visitor on our premises. He is not dependent on us, we are dependent on him. He is not an interruption in our work, he is the purpose of it. He is not an outsider in our business, he is part of it. We are not doing him a favor by serving him, he is doing us a favor by giving us an opportunity to do so." This philosophy should be applied to all consumer interaction. This is because we can get closer to the truth of what customer satisfying service is if we think of it as welcoming hospitality to the customer with courtesy and attentiveness, instead of offering efficiency on a transaction or expecting the customer to be polite to us only. We can relate this statement to e-commerce and e-consumer because it is applicable and similar to online transactions. So, e-commerce is the business of buying and selling goods and services on the internet, while e-consumer is a person who buys goods or services for their own use through internet. This definition based on Cambridge Dictionary. In Malaysia, there are laws that regulate e-consumers. Malaysia has a different legal framework for each category which constitute admissibility and enforceability of e-transaction, penalties for abuse, data privacy and security, and consumer protection. Under admissibility and enforceability of e-transaction are E-Commerce Act 2006 and Evidence Act 1950, where penalties for abuse consist of the Computer Crimes Act 1957, Penal Code and Communication and Multimedia Act 1998, plus Data Privacy and Security has Personal Data Protection Act 2010. Lastly, on part of consumer protection, the laws that govern it are Consumer Protection Act 1999 and Consumer Protection Electronic Trade Transaction Regulation 2012. These are all the provisions that protect e-consumers in Malaysia. Furthermore, there are problems faced by e-consumer with regards to product, data protection and privacy, and also cyber abuse and fraud. Under product are misleading advertisements and products information, inconvenient payment processes, low product quality, imitation goods, guarantees and warranties that fall short of consumer laws, unfair returns and refunds policies, late or non-delivery of products, damaged products, non-compliant products, and underperforming complaint systems are all examples of unfair trade practices. Besides, data protection and privacy mention an inadequate security system put personal and confidential information at risk. For privacy issues, on part of the release of insensitive and confidential medical, financial and personal information. Also spamming emails or WhatsApp message, site cookies tracking, unauthorized employer scrutiny, inquisitive people and even scammers. In addition, installation of undesirable software without the user's agreement because the information providers sometimes request cookies. Plus, spyware is distributed via free software which is browser, toolbars and personal organizers, which is obtained by accident, email attachments, website visits. And lastly, adware installed with a software package tracks end users, web browsing activities and uses the personal information acquired to tailor adverts and other targeted information. On the other hand, cyber abuse and fraud is increasing nowadays because shopping fraud frequently begins with phony websites, mobile apps, or social media ads that imitate well-known retailers and have a URL that is easily confused with that of reputable retailers. Customers will be enticed by popular items at significantly reduced pricing, free shipping, and next day delivery. After payment, goods are not delivered. Next, confidence tricks, which is cyber scams, entice victims with enticing promises of financial or other benefits which take advantage of human flaws such as greed and vanity, as well as trends such as courage, compassion, altruism. Moreover, phishing, brushing, malware, and ransom are all examples of cybercrime. Then, malicious software, which is malware, used to disrupt, damage, or gain illegal access to computer systems and even block access to computer system until payment is made, is a more focused approach and unlawfully obtain and utilize personal data for financial gain, which is ransomware. I will give you an example of problem that occurred in Malaysia. There was news in April 2021 where scammers continued to target CIMB customers by using many different kinds of fake messages. Those who got these messages should never click or call. And there is an example that I given of the fake messages that they got. Many people also spread the scam alert so other people do not get scammed by the scammer.
So next, we move on to the advantages and disadvantages of e-commerce. Nowadays, e-commerce has become more famous among e-consumers instead of buying through face-to-face. This is because e-commerce has too many benefits for them. As for the seller, using e-commerce, they now can carry out their business without limit of time as well as distance. It is because e-commerce can reach all people throughout the world using many apps that have been created nowadays, such as Shopee, Lazada, and many more. All of these apps are available for the e-consumers all the time. The purchases of the goods and services also can be made 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. Plus, it is available to everyone in every place in this world. As for the consumers, by using e-commerce, they can do their shopping online in their home or anytime at their comfort time. This means that they do not need to make time to go to the store physically to buy their necessaries, as they can just browse through so many products within a minute in the apps through their phone. They can also easily compare the price from one store to another store of certain products to get the cheap and quality one. This is much more quickly for the e-consumer to place orders for the things they need. However, people need to be aware that this e-commerce also has its disadvantages, especially towards the consumers. Among them, the e-consumer is facing the issue of identifying, viewing, or touching the products that they want to purchase. Thus, it creates the vagueness of information regarding the products, whether it is in good quality or not. This happens because they just see the product through the picture that the seller provides without knowing that the picture describes the real product or otherwise. Besides that, there is also no guarantee of the transaction security and privacy of the e-consumer when purchasing the product or services. It makes the e-consumer become vulnerable towards the scammer or the one who wants to steal the data of the consumer if the consumer becomes too transparent by giving all the personal data to the seller. Using e-commerce also allows people with good or bad intentions to start their business easily. That is why nowadays there are too many fake sites that sell goods or services which make e-consumers believe it to be true and buy it without knowing that they are actually being scammed by those irresponsible people that eat up customers' money. For example, it is like in Instagram, where many irresponsible people have made an account to sell their fake products by using other sellers' pictures, but they sell it at a cheaper price. Thus, adequate legal protection for e-commerce consumers is really needed, otherwise this e-consumer will be cheated and subjected to all sorts of unfair trade practices. So next, I will explain on the role of international organizations in e-contracting. So, the United Nations has adopted the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, which is called UNCITRAL Model Law on E-commerce. It is the core legal body of the United Nations system in the field of international trade law. It began to work on its model law on e-commerce in 1992 to serve as pioneer e-commerce legislation for the countries to adopt and enact the law in their respective domains. It is to harmonize the legal rules applicable to e-commerce. UNCITRAL has become responsible for several developments in the area of electronic transactions, which includes the preparation of the model laws and recommendations such as promoting confidence in electronic commerce, legal issues on international use of electronic authentication and signature methods, UNCITRAL model law on electronic signatures with guide to enactment, and so on. All of this model law is designed in order to give national legislatures a set of internationally acceptable rules to promote the use of electronic communications. Malaysia also not left behind in adopting the provisions of the model law, where Malaysia has enacted a domestic legislation in the form of Electronic Commerce Act 2006, which is Act 65. This is the primary law that regulates e-commerce transactions in Malaysia, which recognize the commercial transaction conducted through electronic means. Apart from that, Malaysia also has regulated the Consumer Protection Amendment Act 2007 and recently the Consumer Protection Electronic Trade Transactions Regulations CPR 2012. These laws are really important in order to solve the problems that arise in e-commerce. With regards to the problem and challenges faced by e-consumer in using e-commerce in their daily lives, there must be solutions to that. Thus, several steps need to be taken so that e-consumer can use e-commerce without being the victim of irresponsible people. Among the steps that can be taken is, firstly, awareness should be spread among e-consumer regarding the e-commerce security so that e-consumer can be aware regarding the scammer, privacy data, and so on. The strict enforcement of the laws that govern e-consumer should also be done comprehensively so that e-consumer can be involved in e-commerce without fear anymore. The problems of being scammed, leaking of privacy data, and so on is because the enforcement of the law itself was not strictly enforced. That is why those irresponsible people are easily taking advantage of this e-consumer. As for the seller or services who use websites, for example, they should use the public key encryption in secure socket layer, which is SSL, in order to ensure confidentiality, data integrity, and authentication and non-repudiation. Consumers who are dissatisfied with their online purchase can also file their claims in the Tribunal for Consumer Claims, which is TCC, in order for them to settle the dispute between the seller and get the remedies if necessary. However, this TCC only governs the problems happening in Malaysia only. Thus, the UN may propose to make the place for e-consumer who buy goods online from traders outside the country to pursue their rights and claim. This issue needs statutory intervention without much delay due to the borderless nature of e-commerce activities. As for the conclusion, e-commerce has been accepted by most of the people throughout the country because of its ease, flexibility, as well as speed. However, the legislation that governs e-consumer does not comprehensively deal with adequate and sufficient protection yet. The existing solution for the e-consumer problems is yet to exist to protect them from being the victim in using e-commerce. Thus, through this development of the country in e-commerce, the first solution needs to be found quickly, as in the future, we might be dealing more with e-commerce in buying things or getting services instead of being physically dealing with the person.